This is Counselcast, part of the Legal Talk Network, and I'm your host, Karin Conroy. When you face a complex case outside your expertise, you bring in a co-counsel for next-level results. When you want to engage, expand, and elevate your firm, you bring in a marketing co-counsel. In this podcast, I bring in marketing experts who each answer one big question to help your firm achieve more. Here's today's guest.
I'm Tonya Eberhart. I'm the founder of BrandFace. We're known for building profitable personal brands, and our mantra is change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Oh, that is so good because I feel like branding is seen as like these soft, fluffy skills. And I love it when I read and tie in branding with revenue because all of a sudden it clicks with people. So I feel like this is so great. I'm so excited. Tonya, thank you for being here. I could talk about branding all day long. This is, one of my favorite topics. So, but we're going to, we have a limited amount of time today. So we're going to talk about specifically how bold branding can supercharge your client reviews. But let's just talk first about I feel like your tagline is a great place to start. So let's talk first about how it ties in with profit and revenue and in increasing growth and all of that. So let's talk about branding in general, just as kind of a kickoff.
Let's do it. Okay. Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me, Karin.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited to be here. So yes, about 11 years ago when we started the company BrandFace, one of the first things we noticed is there are a lot of people out there talking about personal branding, and there sure is a lot of fluff out there. And
yes.
they were saying things like, just be personal, show personal things on social media, be yourself, be authentic. And I'm sitting there thinking, that does not explain how to build a personal brand.
Yes,
so the first thing we did was super simplify it for our client, and we created a formula for building a personal brand.
Oh, awesome. Let's get into that.
Okay.
Because I feel like, sorry to interrupt, but I feel like everything that you're saying leads to someone to believe that they can be like Kim Kardashian. And that is not the goal of a law firm, obviously. Like that would be so weird if all of a sudden you're trying to build that and feel really strange to the visitors who are looking at you. Like, what is going on? And I see a lot of this. I'm sure you do too on social media where people think that's the goal. So you've got this formula, and how does that work?
So it's real simple. We call it the 3D freedom formula. And the reason we call it the freedom formula is you are building a brand that gives you the freedom to be yourself and attract the people you want into your business and life and build the business and life that you deserve. And so that doesn't happen just by stumbling into it. Yeah. You have to create and set the stage for that. So the 3Ds are define, develop, and display. And if you want me to, I can walk you through real briefly what we do in each one.
All right. I'm writing them down so that I can ask questions. Define, develop, and display.
Okay. You got it. So in the define phase, what we're doing is we're looking at who is your ideal customer. And most people have more than one. Usually, we like to say there's a primary ideal customer, there's a secondary ideal customer. But if you don't know that, you're already headed on the wrong path, right?
Yes.
Because how do you present yourself? How do you market yourself? Unless, first of all, you know who it is you're talking to. And second of all, you know what it is that will attract those people. So
let me give a couple examples because I feel like it helps to visualize this. So let's just say there's there's a million different kind of practice areas and attorneys and everything out there, but let's just kind of focus on two very different ones. So you could be a very small town estate planning attorney. And we've worked with one client that I'm thinking of in particular that does elder law. So their clients are older. They clearly, like, just thinking about who that client is, you can automatically think about where they are online, which is not very many places, right? So maybe Facebook, but probably that's it. And so let's put those guys in one bucket. And then in the other bucket, we're going to have a very aggressive, very kind of revenue-driven personal injury attorney who is in a bigger market. Let's just say let's just say Chicago. So their client is doing a completely different kind of search. they could be of a variety of different
Right.
ages, depending on what's going on. And they are in a different geographic area as well. So let's kind of keep those two types of people and search in mind as we kind of walk through this, because they're going to have different answers to the things that you're explaining. So in this define category, we're defining that elder law attorney and their ideal client as older. They're on a different kind of social media profile versus this urban, different age group kind of clientele. So let's kind of walk through that differently so that people can sort of in their own minds define what this means to them and their firm.
Right. So you touched on one very important thing. Who your client is also tells you where to find them.
Yes.
And that has a huge bearing on your success in your marketing. You know,
Yeah.
where are you marketing? What message are you marketing with? What call to action, et cetera. So we have two very different types of clientele there, of course. So we start there at defining, okay, who are the elderly people that want the estate planning, right? And
Yes.
then, from my past experience in the media world, it doesn't just stop there. Maybe that would be your primary if you were an estate planning attorney, but your secondary would be their influencers, their adult children. And
Yes.
so maybe getting to them on digital assets would be very important as a secondary ideal customer.
Right.
So you dial that in first and know as much as you can about that individual as possible. And I was just telling a real estate broker this the other day. I said, look, don't worry so much about defining your clients as they buy these high-end homes in this area, or they buy, mid-level homes, or they're first-time home buyer or something like that. Look beyond that. What other attributes does this person have? What are their pet peeves? What do they
Yes.
really want in somebody they want to consider their advocate in this process? Are they looking
Yeah.
for somebody more nurturing, or somebody that just calls the shots and says, this is exactly the way we always do it. It works. It's a winning formula. Let's do it. Or somebody who says, hey, come on in. Let's talk about what this means to you. What are you seeking to achieve out of it? How does the rest of the family feel? And those are the things that those particular attorneys need to include in another part of the defined process, which is their point of differentiation.
Yes.
And
Okay.
so every attorney out there has not just one point of differentiation, they have multiple ones. Different things make us different human beings, let's face it.
Sure.
So in looking at the formula of how we do this, it's like, okay, first of all, what are those things that stand out about you as an attorney? And then mixing it with what things your ideal customer appreciates, what things
Yes.
that are going to attract them on the other side. And that's why it's more important than knowing just what type of law you practice,
Yes.
what
And
type
in
of
term
attorney you are, right?
Yeah. And in terms of figuring out what they appreciate, oftentimes this can be a mystery until you ask them. And so I feel
So
like
true.
this is such a missing piece for so many people. And even for myself, when we're closing out a project and I send out a questionnaire and it asks them all kinds of different details about the project and whatever, how did they find us? And then what was a success and what part went really well? I'm always surprised by that.
Yeah.
And so there's certain elements that you just need to ask because you won't know what's inside, their head, and you can't get that out of there until you ask. So make sure that's part of this kind of closing process for your cases
Right.
and your kind of client systems.
And back to your topic of today, how they feel about you and what they appreciated most about you will come out in the review process. And
Yes.
so you
Yeah.
can't skip that part. It's almost like you're executing a survey at that point,
Right.
and you're
Yes.
taking the high points of that survey and utilizing that as your testimony.
Yes.
So I like that connection of those two things.
Yeah.
So back to the define, we've got, the ideal customers, we
Yep.
have the point of differentiation, and then we have the positioning. Now, positioning is what we help them do, because a lot of
Right.
people say, if I knew how to position myself, I wouldn't need you, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Well, and it's complicated. And so this is where we come in and this is honestly, I feel like this is where most people get things wrong. And because it's complicated and it's not something you learn in law school But when it's right, this is where all the other pieces fall into place. So this
Yes.
is honestly, I feel like it's probably the most important piece. Don't you agree?
I do. I
Yeah,
do. Yes. Yes. Because, but the positioning can't happen without the first two parts of
100%.
the
Yeah.
ideal customer. Like, who are you reaching out to and what's different about you to attract them? And then it's
Yes.
like, okay, let's position you in that space. And it
Yes.
can be any kind of positioning. I'll give you a really good example of a guy that I know him well. He's not a client of mine. He was already positioned really well years ago when I first met him. He is in the Atlanta market and he has billboards in downtown Atlanta that say yourbaldlawyer.com. Bald lawyer. Now, here I am driving down through Atlanta because at the time that I met him, I was living in Columbus, Ohio. So I was flying down here to see my family, see a client of mine. And I'm driving past and I see this billboard and here's this bald guy on a billboard and it says yourbaldlawyer.com. And I thought, that is awesome. So I reached
Yep.
out to him. We've had several meetings and we've talked about a lot of things. And I loved it because it's non-intimidating, number one.
Yes.
He's a
Yes.
personal injury attorney. And the one thing that he wanted to make sure he got across in his presence is he did not want to be what he considered the typical attorney that's just, looks angry on a commercial
Yeah.
and talking about how important it is to be tough. Certainly nothing wrong with any of that approach. It just wasn't what he wanted.
Yeah.
And so when he did that, he just really skyrocketed in his
Yes.
presence in this market. And when you get to his website, you go to, see all of his digital assets, you'll find that he really is that more nurturing kind of a person. He's very, very experienced, qualifications through the roof. And so all of that. Now that's a, one example. There are many, many ways to position someone, but it depends on your preference. Because if we work with a client and we don't position them in a way that they can wear that suit every day, guess what? They're not going to do. They're not going to market themselves that way.
Right. Yeah.
So they have to feel that brand, and we call it breathing your brand. And so that's another aspect of the definition phase is we've got to come up with something that they feel they can put on like a suit and wear it every single day.
I like that explanation because I feel like that's very easy to relate to, that you've gone to the store, you found this suit, and you're looking at it and you're like, this is what that other successful lawyer would wear that I'm trying to pretend to be. So I'm going to buy it even though it doesn't quite fit so well. And then it just sits in your closet. And we all have these things that we buy and we're like, I don't even know why I bought that. It doesn't fit me very well, but I bought it. Maybe I bought it because I was trying to be this other person. And we all know how that feels. And so don't let it be this thing that just, first of all, that you're trying to pretend to be somebody else. And second of all, this thing that you buy that sits in your closet and you never put on.
So true. I literally just had a client the other day send me Facebook cover photos of another person in their industry, and it's in another country. And immediately I got it and I said, stop sending me other people's stuff, right?
Yes.
You're better than that.
Yeah.
This is dark. This is unapproachable. This is not what you are at all. You like that look and feel, but that's not you. And he's like,
Right.
You know what? You're right. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to stop doing that.
Yes.
And he was
Honestly,
so great about it.
This whole idea this is such a major part of the work that we do, is constantly the comparison. The grass is always greener. Let me send you this website of this competitor down the street. Making all these assumptions based on what they're seeing from the outside, because obviously they don't know what the numbers look like on the back end.
Right.
But can you spend a minute? I mean, we've already talked a little bit about why that's, not the right approach, but why should we not be continuously just taking, the work that somebody else did and sort of like trying to just, I've had people contact me and say, I saw this website that you did for this other firm. Can you just throw our logo on it and, call it a day? And it's like, oh gosh, I can't even begin to tell you how many reasons I have for why that's a bad idea. But let's try in like a minute to summarize, like number one, why is that a bad idea? And why is that not going to work?
Well, it's not just a bad idea. It's a terrible idea.
Okay. Exactly.
And it's not going to work because at the end of the day, that's not you. You may identify with what you see on a two-dimensional or even one-dimensional billboard. You may like what you see and think, oh, everybody really thinks that person is very successful. I really like this part of the script in their logo, or there's something about that visual representation that appeals to them. But if they really look deep inside and understand what they want out of life and how they want to be perceived by their clients, it will never ever match up to what that other person's brand looks like, because every single person is unique. And that's why you can't do cookie cutter personal branding, because it's personal. It's very personal. But when they take the time to actually go through those steps, they don't even think about that other person anymore.
Exactly.
The very best thing I ever heard from any client of mine ever came from a lady in New Orleans. And she said, Tonya, now after I have built my brand, I realize I no longer have competitors.
Yes.
Think about that.
That
she
is
set herself in a category by herself.
Yep,
and
exactly.
That's
and
when
that's
she
it.
realized it.
That's the goal.
She didn't realize that until she got through the process.
Exactly.
But it's trusting in that process.
And think about how much freedom that gives you, because you're not just in this rat race then. And all of a sudden, so for myself, I feel like I'm in that same space. Obviously, I need to drink my own Kool-Aid. We've spent so much time and effort on our own brand and strategy and positioning and all of that. So now it gets to the point where first of all, when you're on a sales call, when I'm on a sales call and I realize it's either not a good fit or they're trying to compare me to things like Squarespace, that's an easy conversation. And normally, if I feel like or not normally, but under the opposite scenario where I would feel defensive and like I was in that rat race, that would be upsetting and that would be frustrating. But instead, when I have those calls, I'm like, yes, okay, first of all, I can talk you through this. Second of all, if you continue to believe that that's the right answer, then we're not a good fit. And so let's not waste each other's time. And so I can approach it from a very clean, healthy, strategic position. And oftentimes, like 6 months down the road, I get another call. And they're like, wait a minute, you were right. That was such a bad idea. But sometimes, people have to go through those exercises to kind of learn those lessons.
And occasionally,
you
have to remind people that they came to you to be different.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's why, what is the point of marketing if you're just going to kind of rinse and repeat what everybody else is doing? Like that, that is not what we're here to do for you. Okay. So we were on define, develop, and then display is the third. Yeah. So explain that.
Okay, so we got through define. Now we're in develop. And develop is now we're going to create all of the things that allow us to articulate the brand, to get it out there, right? To put into our marketing. So the development of a brand is in two parts: brand messaging, or the story, right? And then brand imagery, or the look and feel. So most people go at it completely backward, Karin. Yeah. They say, okay, I'm ready to do branding. I need to hire a photographer. I need to hire a logo designer. And that's the first thing they think of. Okay. The very first thing they should be thinking of is, what's the story? What is it that sets you apart? So here are 5 questions that, if you guys get your pens out, because you will want to write these down. 5 questions, we call them critical questions that every great brand must answer. Okay. Number 1, exactly who do you serve? Number 2.
Yes. Okay. So that's kind of that ideal client that we talked about in the first step.
Yes. Okay. Number 2, exactly how do you serve them?
Okay. What do you mean by that? Like,
yep. So what is it that you do differently, uniquely? Okay. How do you take them through the steps? Okay. What is it that you do for that client? Because unless you can articulate that, they're just going to put you in a bundle with everybody else.
Yes. Okay.
And then third is what qualifies you to serve them.
Okay.
That's your experience. That's all your qualifications, your education, the background, all of that. Then how does it make their life better? You have to be able to articulate that. Yeah. And then finally, what makes you different from everyone else who is also trying to serve this same client?
Yes. Okay, so here's my question. So number 3 is your experience. How do you qualify to serve them? And then number 4 is, how does it make their life better? When you are looking at something as simple as the website and that first impression, I always talk about how you lead with basically number 4, how you make their life better, and then you support it with number 3. Is that your same advice in this same process where you don't lead with where you went to law school? That's kind of that's after you tell them how you can make their life better.
Right. That's kind of the foundation that props up the purpose, your purpose. You lead with the purpose. The purpose is helping someone do blank, right?
Yeah.
Like who are you helping? So it all kind of goes together, right?
Yeah.
But I love your assessment, which is let's start with how we're going to make this person's life better, okay?
Right.
And calling out who that person is. If you're this person, like if you've experienced this, then this is what the outcome that we want for you. This is why, this is who comes to us for help, right?
Yeah.
And so articulating it that way is really important. So totally agree with you on that.
Okay. So the 5 critical questions. Number 1, I'm just going to repeat them or have you repeat them really quick because I feel like it bears repeating. I feel like they're so important in figuring out that positioning. And before you do that, I want to say a couple things about what I didn't hear. I didn't hear you say anything about like state the city that your office is located in. I didn't hear anything about tell me how many millions of dollars you have won for your clients. And I didn't hear anything about like put your headshot front and center and tell me about your team from the beginning. Obviously that kind of qualifies under some of that qualifies under the experience. But once again, we're not going to lead with that. We're leading with the problems that you're solving and how you serve them and who they are. So really quick, the 5 questions. Number 1, who you serve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2, how do you serve them?
Yep.
3, what qualifies you to serve them? 4, how does it make their life better? And 5, what makes you different than everyone else also trying to serve that same customer?
Okay, I love it. Okay, so kind of rolling into, as I was saying, the things I wasn't hearing, what are some of the things that you see people get wrong about all of this? Those 5 questions specifically, but, branding in general.
Number 1 would be focusing on things that don't matter.
Yeah.
That's a big, and focusing more on your accomplishments than your client's needs. That's a big one. But a lot of people just like throw the kitchen sink at everything. If you've got a billboard, you've got 18 things on it. If if you're running a TV ad or do a YouTube video, there's stuff all over the screen. Stop the insanity would be my advice. Focus.
Yeah. So I have a lot of clients where they'll come to us with these very outdated websites that were in that whole strategy that was probably 10 years ago, where it was like bombard the website with every keyword. And lawyers loved this because they love to just like use all the words just in case there was a word they forgot. Let's throw in 5 more. So this doesn't work anymore. This doesn't work for SEO. Google does not like it, but also it doesn't work for regular human beings. Nobody wants to wade through all of that content. So they're just going to go on to the next one. But when we walk through the process and what we're going to do, we always talk about, okay, we're going to scale back this content. It's going to feel a little scary and we're going to make it very succinct. And we're going to probably delete, especially on your homepage, lots and lots of words.
Lots of stuff. Yes.
So there's a lot of fear around that though. So when we first start doing that, they're like, wait a minute. And they kind of push back and that freaks them out. So let's talk about that for a minute and why it works better and why it lands better with a human being.
Yeah. Okay. So I relate that a lot of times to choosing an ideal customer. Fear of focus is the number 1 failure of businesses. Like that's where they all fail. They have a fear of focus. Yeah. So if, for instance, across the board, most of the time, people can't name a certain segment that they service. They say, well, I'll work with anybody, right?
Right.
And I think, well, that old country song, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right?
Yes. Yes.
So it is that focus because the goal in marketing is to, number 1, achieve identification. And what I mean by that is you look at my brand and you say, That's what I need. That's me. I identify with that. I need what they have to offer. They service people like me. And when you feel that way, you feel special. Thus the word specialization, specialize in something. You
Yeah.
don't specialize in anything if you do everything.
Right.
And
Yes.
we like to say, if you try to help everyone, you're just going to help yourself right out of business. So, so you have to
so
really
true. Yeah.
It is very true. It is very true. So it is just like that. When it comes to a website, if you're trying to communicate everything on the homepage, your bounce rates are going to be through the roof.
Yeah.
Because what's the number one goal of getting them there? Okay. Let's keep this in mind. You've probably spent a lot of money to try to get them to a website because the SEO tactics of burying 4 paragraphs in the footer of your site are not working anymore. They don't. Right. It stopped working like 20 years ago.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, so those tactics are gone. So when you spend all this money or time or effort to get people to your website, what is it that you want them to know? You want them to identify with you, first of all. You do want them to see your face. That's because people don't do business with a logo. They do business with a person. Yeah. You don't need to be, propping your, leg up on a chair behind this, very slick with a bookshelf behind you necessarily.
Right.
You want to be
the law books.
There's exactly. There's that balance between professionalism and personal touch, right? That personal connection. And so you definitely, and approachability is the number one thing we look for in a good photo shoot. But you want to be front and center when they get to your website at some point, because you want them to associate that feeling of having their problem solved with this person that can solve that problem. Right. And you walk them through, is this you? Have you experienced this? Here's who I've helped. Here's how I've helped them. Here are my qualifications, those kind of things. Yeah. So I call it the homepage journey. Yes. The homepage journey. So it's like, who are we? What do we do? How do we serve you? Right? Those kind of things. And not necessarily in that order, but those things, answers to those 5 questions need to be on the homepage. And I'm not talking about paragraphs long. Do not do that. Everybody listen to Karen is what I'm saying.
Oh gosh, it's so frustrating. Yes. Okay. So now let's get into the idea of reviews, because I don't have a smooth transition for this, but this is kind of like, we're assuming you've gone through this process and you've now got them into your firm, you're working with them now. And this, again, there's some fear that my clients have had around this. How do I ask for a review? Where do I send them? What if they say something that isn't correct? Or, all of these questions come up. So how do reviews go hand in hand with branding, and how does it help?
Yeah. Okay. So if you do a really good job at branding yourself and you ask what I call leading questions in when it comes time for a review, hey, would you please say something? Would you please do a review and let other people know how you feel about blank, right? Yeah. Lead them into that brand just a little bit. Yes. And for us, if I were to say to you, hey, Karen, you've said so many nice things. Would you be kind enough to do that in a Google review? I can either sum it up for you, what you just said, and send it back to you, and you can critique and make sure that that's exactly what you said. But I love what you said about now your brand is profitable. Yes. Now your brand is aligned. Now your brand is concise, right? You see how I use that word profitable, because we're known for profitable personal branding. Yeah. I really would, and I see now you're making more money per client, and now you're able to charge what you're worth, right? Can you lead something to that effect for me? That would be wonderful, right? And that's how you do it. Another tip for people is the very moment somebody gives you a really great compliment, you don't have to be all the way through the process of working with them. You could be 4 weeks into the process and they say something really kind. It's like, that is so nice. I know it may be early to ask for this, but would you be so kind as to put this in writing for me? I mean, I would really appreciate that. And as a matter of fact, I'll do the same for you, because I've gotten to know you well enough now that I know the type of person you are. Even if I don't work with you, I know the type of person, and you're exactly the type of person I would choose. I'll do the same for you. So reciprocation is another one.
Okay, so I just want to underline two things that you said. Earlier, you were mentioning about getting reviews that align with kind of search terms and keywords and things that are part of your brand. So you were saying for you guys, if you heard the word profitable, that obviously aligns with the way that you guys brand your
Right.
firm. And so if someone says something like, hey, oh my gosh, this brand is so great. All of a sudden I raise my prices and, I'm making more money and whatever. And it's like, bing, there's like a light bulb there
Right.
where now you're asking for a review, but it's not just like a, hey, they're great. I loved working with them. It's specific to the kind of searches and also the way you're branding your firm. So let's say that you are that bald lawyer and you're trying to position yourself as approachable and great and whatever, and someone says something along those lines, then you want to phrase that review using those words because it attracts more of the same of that kind of stuff. So
Yes.
I just wanted to underline that because I think it's really strategic and super smart. And then the other thing is timing. So then you were talking about asking them at any point, and the timing is most important from what I've recognized at a positive moment. So it doesn't matter if the positive moment is early, mid, later, 3 weeks later, next year, it doesn't matter. But at a positive moment when they're feeling good. So I use this example all the time. I am a big fan of Trader Joe's. And what Trader Joe's does that is genius for marketing is their sample thing. And obviously things have changed since COVID, but they still offer samples and they're not doing it just because they're nice. They know that you're way more likely to feel gratitude and obligation. And so as soon as they're having that feeling of gratitude and obligation, then they have the cookies sitting right there and you're way more likely to buy them. So use that. Use the idea of like they're saying something nice. They obviously have that feeling of gratitude. So use it, to kind of better your business. Hey, that's so great. I appreciate that you feel this way. And I do agree this whole idea of drafting the review for them, just send it over. So, and then a link, like here's the link, click on this link, copy and paste, and we're done. And thank you so much. And all of a sudden your reviews skyrocket. Like all of a sudden it's easier. You've got tons of them.
And
Awesome.
reciprocation, another huge one. If I offer to do the same for you, I can do that, as a, what do you call it? Just a good character testimonial, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
I appreciate his approach to this or this, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't say I'm his client.
Right, exactly. I've worked with them and they're even if it's worked with them as, you can even say they were a client of ours, but their attention to detail is amazing, or their follow through, or their personality is and you can rightly and legally and honestly say these things about their personality and their character. Like that's, there's no issue.
Character witness in legal terms. How about that?
Exactly. Perfect. I love it. Okay, awesome. It is time for the book review. So if you haven't checked out our library, we have this awesome. And before we get to that, I also wanted to mention your book. So you guys have a book about branding. So let's spend a minute on that and then we'll get to your book recommendation.
Absolutely. Ours is called BrandFace for Entrepreneurs. And it basically takes you through the journey of how to position yourself and how to, like the building blocks, if you will, of building a personal brand. It gives you lots of great ideas to help you market that personal brand as well.
Okay, BrandFace, we'll link to that on the show page as well. But then you also have a recommendation for a business book that you want the audience to be familiar with. We'll put this in the library as well. So Tonya, what's the book recommendation you have for us?
Okay. It's called Age Well and Feel Great. And it was written by a client of ours, actually. His name is Al Lyman. And in going through the branding process, we have branded him the Age Optimizer. His tagline is live stronger in your second half, because what he does is he helps people over 50 with their health span, not lifespan. Lifespan is how long we live. Health span is how long we live healthy. Right.
Oh, I love it.
And I'm actually about halfway through that book right now. It is a big, comprehensive book, but he doesn't miss a thing. And I've learned so much about every facet of my health. I really just want to be a healthier person. And I don't want to do what we call the doctor dance later in life. I don't want to go to 5 different doctors like my family members are going through right now, many of them.
Right.
I don't want to be in that spot. And I'm going to do everything I can to try to avoid that, to try to live a healthier life.
So I love this. I feel like this is a major topic that everybody, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger as our aging population grows. But I also want to tie this back to branding. And this may seem like a weird left turn, but I do feel like if your brand has not been developed well, it's not going to age well. And so you are going to do this dance where you're describing like this doctor dance. It's going to be the equivalent in marketing where you're like trying TikTok or you're trying this and you're trying to address the symptoms of a failing brand with things that are not going to help, and they're only going to create frustration, and you're going to spend a lot of time and money on the source of the problem is, not a great brand. And so when you build a fantastic brand that is truly built on your unique offering, serving a specific targeted market, your results are going to be long. And then you don't have to keep reinventing that time and time again. It's like buying anything of quality and investing in anything of quality. All of a sudden, it's got way more longevity. And over time, there's going to be core elements that you can continue to use for the long term instead of kind of pivoting and changing things and confusing your potential clients over time. So I do love the topic, but I do feel like it also totally relates to branding.
It totally relates to branding. And when I say, doctor dance, it kind of makes me think of, okay, what about the marketing tango, right?
Yes.
Let's look at it in ballroom dancing terms, right? So marketing, when you said you just get confused and you go and like dance all around it, like, Al's book talking about how to age well and feel great. But this is like the tango is known for this love-hate relationship expressed as a dance, right?
Yeah.
And it is a love-hate when you figure out, oh, this marketing looks great, but oh my gosh, it doesn't work. But this sounds great, but it doesn't work, right? And so you're so right. And the ability to have a fantastic brand that's super dialed in will take you through the rest of your professional career. If you get
100%.
that story dialed in, look at it this way. The story and where you got to right now and why you started the business, helping the people you helped and how it changes their lives, that story for you doesn't change.
Yes.
Certain little aspects here and there change that you can certainly tweak as time goes by, but your core of your brand story does not change. And if you do it right, it will last you the rest of your life.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's such a good tie-in. I love, like, it seemed like sort of random and not connected, but we brought it together. That was great.
We did.
Awesome. Okay, so Tonya, what is a big takeaway that you'd love? I mean, we covered so many different things about branding and how to do it right and how to make money from it and how to get reviews and all that good stuff. So what's a big takeaway that you'd like people to get from the episode?
So I just want everybody to understand that when you come into a branding journey like this, it can be very intimidating sometimes. You're not sure what to expect. You think you're going to walk in and somebody's just going to say, here's your brand, now go and put it into practice, right? Not realizing it's a very collaborative, in-depth effort that you're going through, but super simple in the process. The one thing I want them to know is everyone is a star. So when somebody asked me years ago, they said, I received this DM through LinkedIn from a guy. And he said, hey, Tonya, make me a star. And I immediately, without even thinking twice, hit him back and I said, we don't make stars, we unveil them.
Oh, and I love that.
That became a tagline or mantra of sorts for us from years and years ago. Yeah. And I just want everybody to know that the reason people look at other attorneys, for instance, and say, I want to be like that guy and admire that is because they're not seeing the star within themselves. And if they can stop for a moment and see that, they'll truly have no competitors ever again.
I love that so much because I'm sure you get this all the time, like you were just describing, and we're trying to have this dialogue and we're trying to make this project kind of move through the regular steps of the process. And the feedback is, I don't know, you're the expert. And it's like, no. I am the expert about how we're going to do this and how I'm going to, make this look great and appear great and the messaging and all that. But you are the expert on you. I don't know your firm.
Exactly.
I don't know, the elements of what your clients are talking to you about. I don't know what happens when you pick up the call and walk them through and convert them to being a client. I don't know any of that stuff. So it's really important to recognize that this is a mutual project, and it requires elements of both of us being involved and engaged for it to work well.
Partnership is the key word. It is a partnership. And, if you're not willing to come into it and spill, right? And say, okay, this is where my story, this is like really where it came from. And these are the things that are really important to me and why I'm doing what I'm doing with great passion. Your marketing is never going to showcase that.
Yes.
It's never going to work. So, But if you can do that and you can be a true partner with Karin and talk to her about, here's where I'm really coming from and here's who I really want to attract and here's something about me you didn't know. If you can share those things with her, you're going to have a website that will kill it.
That's it. Oh my gosh. So true. And those are the ones that work the best. And it seems like an easy formula, but you and I both know it's complicated and there's iterations. You got to go through it. There's a process, takes time and effort, but when it's done well, it does work. And there's nothing more rewarding than getting those emails about how it's finally working. Like everything, all the pieces are coming together and it's working. And where we started this whole episode and conversation is how this then ties to their profit. And that's at the end of the day, that's the goal. It's not to look pretty. It's not to do any of these other things. It's to make more money.
We like to say, turn your purpose into profit.
That's it. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Tonya Eberhart is the founder of BrandFace. We will link to your book, your site, all your socials, all that good stuff on the show notes. But thank you so much. This was such a useful and helpful conversation about branding. I appreciate you being here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Karin.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the CounselCast podcast. Be sure to visit our website at counsel-cast.com for the resources mentioned on the episode and to give us your feedback. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate if you could rate and review the podcast on Apple and subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. See you on the next one.